Hi lovelies, it's Luna Anna here, and this is my number 5 in my video series Healing the Patriarchy with Love. And today I'm here to talk about cost of living crisis, how the rich get richer and the poor get poorer under the patriarchy, and how vulnerable and minority groups end up missing out under the patriarchy. So, big topic. Thought we may as well go in for the jugular now. With love, of course. So, I think it's possibly happening everywhere in the world, but it is definitely happening in the UK that there is what is being dubbed a cost of living crisis, which means the basic necessities that we need to live are becoming too costly, they're too high, the price too high for everyday people to be able to afford. And people are having to make choices between, I won't eat today because I've had to have a hot shower, or, for example, I don't think I'll be able to have the heating on at all in the winter. And people are having to make these choices all the time, and it's putting a lot of pressure on people, especially, elderly or more vulnerable people, or if you've got children. But really everybody is vulnerable to this, because anybody could end up unable to have their basic needs met because the cost of it is too high. And there's lots of different theories about why that is, and lots of different reasons about why it's occurring, and it's very easy to get stuck in a cycle of blame and judgment and criticism. For example, maybe blaming the government. I apologise for my cat. I'm not very well. I've got really bad complex PTSD, and I've been having night terrors, so he's very unsettled. So I apologise if you can hear him shouting. He gets unsettled when I am. So maybe blaming the government. I'm not saying they're not to blame, by the way. I'm just saying, different things are being blamed. Brexit is being blamed here in the UK, so we were part of the EU, we're now not, and that's caused problems with supply chains of food and things like that. Or maybe, blaming the billionaires that own the fuel companies or the food companies, for example. And I'm not saying any of this is wrong, but what I am saying is I don't think it's helpful to get stuck in a cycle of just blaming them and expecting them to change, because what's apparent is those sort of things are probably going to take longer to change than what it would take to change ourselves, because most of us are in a position whereby our basic needs are now depending on us changing, and therefore looking to people like the government to fix it probably just isn't going to work, or maybe isn't going to work fast enough. So I thought it was wise to do a video to maybe just sort of like talk about that a little bit, because of course when people's basic needs are threatened, they go into survival mode, and when people are in survival mode, it's harder for them to be loving, and therefore it's harder to heal the patriarchy with love. So this is really a call for those of us that can see that, to stand up and take wise, loving action. And I don't really have the answers. I'm not here sort of preaching answers or anything like that, and I guess everybody will have their own way of going about this. But some things that I think might come in the future and that might be helpful are things like community gardens, for example, growing organic veg, that eventually it gets so big everybody can have a share from it, but everybody helps to tend it and to look after it, that kind of thing. I think, personally, I think we need to go back to getting our food locally from the local farmer, and cutting out the big supermarkets and things that are making huge profits. I think that's just simpler, it's kinder to the earth, it's more in tune with nature, it's fresher. I just, in a way, I don't understand why we don't do that, to be honest. Um, and then there's things like, this is a call for us to wake up and realise that we have to share resources and that nobody can be taking more than what they need from the earth. And you might think that that's all billionaires, millionaires, rich people, but actually most of us are probably taking a bit more from the earth than we're meant to. And I can use myself as an example. It's something that I was doing that I'm now much more conscious of and working to change in myself. But I kind of one of my little things was to be a bit of a shopaholic when it came to clothes. Now, I haven't had the money to do that in probably about 20 years. But I was really a shopaholic. I had loads of different handbags. I honestly had more than 300 pairs of high heel shoes, and they were all designer and they were all amazing, if I'm honest. And I had loads of vintage clothes, loads of new clothes for every, new outfit for every occasion. That included shoes, jewellery, handbag. But if you think about the amount that takes from the planet, it's taken an awful lot from the planet by doing that, because we know, it uses a lot of water, for example, to make clothes. I don't fully understand why, I just know it does. And of course it's plastic. The clothes, then you get bored of them. I was often bored of them. So what then happens with those clothes? Well, I took them to a charity shop, but they're still existing on the planet as more than what is needed. Can you see? It's like, this overconsumption is creating imbalance, basically. So anywhere that anybody's taking more than what they need, that's a small example, and probably one that most people can relate to. But there's also things like, houses. We're in a housing crisis. So, if you've got more than one home, do you really need that? Or do you just like it because it gives you extra income? Now, I do believe in choice. So none of this is it's not criticism. And everybody will have their own reasons for why they're doing things. But I think in the long-term future, if we want to be sustainable, we're not going to be able to have more than our share, basically, more than what we need. We just won't be able to do that. And if we take the example of kind of millionaires, billionaires, they are hoarding more cash than they ever possibly could need for themselves. And they'll have their reasons for doing it, and I suspect it's probably linked to power, but I don't know. And I know they do obviously spend it, they obviously will be having fun with it, I'm sure, going on holidays and things like that. But if you just look at the amount of overconsumption that comes from having that much money, flying on private jets, always on holiday, anything like that is actually causing the planet problems at this time. And I don't necessarily think us all suddenly changing and not doing that and is necessarily the way to go, because I'm talking about healing the patriarchy with love. So if there's something that you love that's bringing you joy, and that's bringing more joy into the planet's atmosphere, then I think there's a balance to be had between, how much we give up, how much we sacrifice in order to share, and how much we continue to take. So it's kind of just creating more balance in that area, and it's not saying that, we all have to become destitute and only taking a little bit from the planet, because like I say, I think we'd all be pretty miserable if that happened. And it's restrictive, which love isn't restrictive. Love allows all things. So it wouldn't necessarily be the most loving thing to do, but I do think that on individual basis we can look at our own habits and our own ways of living, and we can come up with ways that are more sustainable, that share more with people. And once that kind of that energy starts to build momentum, it will spill out into the people that are really struggling with it. Millionaires and billionaires are they're struggling to give, they're struggling to share, basically. And it must be down to insecurity, I would think, and therefore a desire for power. So if we all kind of work on healing that in ourselves, why do we kind of overconsume in whatever area we do? And I suspect that everybody's probably overconsuming in some area. If we work on that, then that eventually will, because of the law of oneness, we're all connected by source. If we start to do that, the collective consciousness will create a tipping scale, basically, and the balance will tip a bit more into fairness. I do think the more people are pressurized over their basic needs, the more likely they are to act up, basically. You know, if you put people under immense pressure and they don't know if their basic needs are going to be met, understandably, they start getting defensive. And when people are defensive, that's when they might be angry or lash out as a defense mechanism. So we are likely to see more violence on the planet if we don't start to share our resources and do something about it. One thing I have seen going around in the UK is the do not pay. So I think in October, people are planning on not paying the gas and electric companies. And I have to say, I mean, I'm all for people coming together and doing something. I think that is absolutely brilliant, and they've obviously kind of like everybody's joined in, and that is really, really good. And I hope it works. But my intuitive sense with it is that it might not work, because really it's the same energy that we're trying to heal. It's just putting more of me, me, me. I'm going to keep it all for myself and you're not getting it. It's got that same vibe, you know, it's the same frequency. So I don't actually think that will work. I think it might actually make the problem worse, if I'm totally honest. And I also think, you know, the actual gas and electric companies themselves, my one wrote to me, I actually got the email yesterday, and they have said, and I believe them, I know a lot of people go, I don't believe them, because we're all in a rah mood, but I actually, you know, I really was open to it and curious, and the energy of it is the truth. It was the truth, I could tell. At least that was my interpretation of it. It was the truth. And they were saying they've had no profits. They haven't paid their shareholders any dividends. They've absorbed, I can't remember, it's something like £15 million worth of what would have been passed on to customers if they were pricing as per their price, you know, what they're paying for it. They used to buy gas and electric at £1 billion a year. And this year they've had to buy it at £9 billion, and they've absorbed a lot of that, was basically what they were saying, and that they've not made any profits. So if loads of people start causing them, you know, there's like people are saying make a complaint, stop paying your direct debit. If we start causing them lots of admin work and they have to pay their workers overtime, and the workers start getting put under stress, and don't forget that they're in the same situation as us, these workers, you know, and then that company may even go bust, for example, if they really genuinely have had no profit and not been able to pay their shareholders a dividend, then that is a real risk. And if that happens, then we're all going to be even deeper in it, basically. But I'm open to it. Hey, I'm open to it, you know, and I hope it does work. I just have my doubts, really, about it, because like I say, it is the same kind of energy, and it's not love, it's not compassion. It's just, right, I'm taking these resources for myself and I'm going to be really angry, and I don't care who gets hurt and what gets done in the process. And that's not healing. That doesn't heal anything, unfortunately. So, you know, what I think happens really with patriarchy is, you know, I've talked a little bit about this in my other videos, is that, you know, because I've been likening it to an over-reliance and an overvaluing of the mind, which is masculine in its principles, and an under-reliance and undervaluing of the heart, which is feminine in its principles. And that's how externally it plays out as, you know, women and the feminine being oppressed, and there's this giant lack of balance, and the masculine becomes unwell because the mind is not meant to be over-relied on and overvalued. It's meant to be, you know, a balance, a marriage, a sacred union between the feminine and the masculine. And if you think about it, if we're all just up here in the mind, which is generally where we tend to think of it as being, don't we, energetically, kind of up here, where the brain is, we're not here in our hearts and our bodies, then that's a big gap, isn't it? And so isn't it funny that there's a big gap between people and the resources, you know, who's got what resources. And that disparity is like a reflection of this gap, really. But also, because the mind can only work really with the tangible, only, you know, pretty much just works with what's in front of it, and only really puts any kind of value onto what's in front of it. All the feminine stuff from the heart, which isn't necessarily tangible, unless the mind and heart work together to create it into something tangible. You know, people that don't have money and things like that are getting kind of thought of as being lesser. And it's basically a trick of the mind, you know, and even I'd go as far as to say an illness of the mind, that it can only really value, you know, things that are tangible. So it values money, of course, because money's tangible, and money gives you the option to buy more tangible things and do more tangible things. Value is not being put on things like, you know, for example, refugees that are doing immense work in this world of healing trauma. You know, they're taking a huge, absolutely massive chunk of really nasty trauma, and war and persecution and trafficking, you know, and not being able to live in your land because of climate disaster. They're just taking a huge, massive chunk of that from the planet and they're healing it. And they get treated worse than anybody else on this planet. And that just tells you, you know, we're not valuing the unseen, the feminine, the things that are intangible. You know, we're going, oh, that's only trauma work. Well, that's their own fault. Or, well, I don't care. They're not taken from us. They're not taken from our country. They're not taking a house that somebody that was born here could have. You know, that kind of very stuck in the mind, not valuing the invisible work that these people are doing is a symptom of that. And it's the same for any minority group, or, you know, any group that doesn't fit the ideals of the mind. And like I say, the mind likes money because it's tangible. And there's nothing wrong with money. I just think it needs to be shared out a bit more, you know. And, you know, I'm always praying that there'll be a millionaire that just kind of breaks the taboo, breaks the trend. And there might even be some, but I don't know of them if there are. Actually, I think, just thinking about that now, I think there might be a man called, yeah, I think he's called Dan Price, because I loved his surname. I thought that was just brilliant, Dan Price. And I don't know if he's a millionaire, but I think, you know, he is a business owner. And I think he's doing things slightly differently. Forgive me if I've got him all wrong. I've only seen snapshots, so I don't really know. But I think he is doing things differently, like he pays his workers fairly, for example. And, you know, when he advertises a job, millions of people come running because they want to work with him, because he's very fair to his workers and they can work from home if they want to, and things like that. And, you know, and he trusts his workers, that kind of thing. So I think there are some coming forward that are starting to kind of shape the new paradigm, but we need more. We need a lot more. And, you know, the ones that are kind of always in the press for just how much money they've got, you know, I don't really want to name names, really, but you know who I'm talking about, the big players, that, you know, don't seem to ever want to give. I mean, they could give endlessly and still have way more than what they need for themselves. And they just don't seem to be willing to kind of break through that. So I'm just praying all the time that one of them does, because once one does, it'll be harder for the others, won't it? That's all it takes. It just takes one person to do something different, you know. And it's the same with us. So we just need to find, what can we do individually on a small basis differently, that's loving and kind, and that helps to shift the balance. So like I say, my contribution is that not buying loads of clothes and shoes. I mean, it's easy because I haven't got any money. But even if I did, I'd be conscious of, you know, I'm not buying any, or I'd have to have some kind of policy around it whereby it was like one in, one out, and it was going to, you know, maybe 2 refugees or to somebody more in need, that kind of thing. And we can all do work on this. There's, you know, it's whatever's in your heart, you know, what bit of it really pees you off, you know. And if it's, for example, that the elderly won't be able to have the heating on this winter and so will die, you know, invite your elderly neighbours round to yours when you have got the heating on. Um, Buy them an electric blanket, pay their bill if you can, you know, that kind of thing. But long term, we need to be looking at more sustainable, renewable resources that are in our own hands, I think. And, you know, everything's not without its issues. I'd read recently that wind turbines, which I've always been in favour of, I think they disrupt the land or something. I don't know why we can't just have them out at sea if that's the case. Or do they disrupt the land there? I don't know. But, you know, it's just kind of like working with the area that you do know, doing the bit that you do know. So, you know, I'm doing these videos because this is kind of talking about it is kind of my thing, and sharing about it is my thing. And you'll have your thing. You'll have your thing that you're good at. There will be something, you know. Maybe you are a knitter and you can knit lots of blankets for the elderly, or just for anybody that, you know, needs them. Maybe you're a baker, so you can go around and bake bread and give it out in the community to people that you know are really struggling to afford food. Maybe you're a gardener, so you do what I was talking about earlier and start a community garden. Maybe I have seen recently people have been doing, you know, school uniform hubs here. So when the old school uniform that somebody's got is no longer, you know, it no longer fits the child, because of course children grow really fast, or they start going to a different school. If it's in really good nick, then, you know, they're putting it into these school uniform hubs, and then people that can't afford uniform are getting them. And also, we're not overproducing, we're not over consuming by doing that, you know. And I saw a clothes swap advertised the other day, and this is where people, I think there was like a bit of an admin fee, because of course the people can't just run this voluntarily, because everybody's struggling, but there was like a small fee to go in and buy clothes that had been brought in, and you're kind of like swapping them for that. So say you bring 3 items of clothing in, you can buy 3 items of clothing for a very cheap price. I think it was only £2.50 per item. So that kind of thing. There'll be something you can do. You can car share, you know, because petrol prices and diesel prices are really high at the moment. Or you could cycle. I know somebody that's now cycles to work, which is, you know, much better for the environment and also much better for their health and well-being. So there's all these little things that you can do, and you just have to find the one that your heart is pulling you to and do that, you know. There'll be something definitely. So a good indicator is look at the thing that's irritating you most. And you might think, well, that's the government, that's Brexit, that's those greedy millionaires, but, you know, bring it down a level, bring it back to yourself, you know, why is that irritating you? And then when and you might need to keep asking why quite a lot. It might be good to write it out, actually. Keep asking yourself why and writing that answers down until you get to one that you're like, oh, actually, I can do something with that. So I hope that helps. Another way of thinking of it is cost of living crisis is a message from the universe that the cost of us continuing to live how we live now is too high, and that we have to take action now. So, and I'm not talking about the tangible things here. So we're going to go into the realm of the feminine. So I've just talked about all the tangible masculine things that we can do. Now I'm going to talk about the feminine stuff that can be done. And the feminine side of the cost of living crisis is the cost of us continuing to live how we've always lived. So it's the cost, in essence, it's the cost of us not waking up and realising, oh, that thing I've been doing is actually really unconscious, and it's actually hurting the planet, it's hurting me, it's hurting the people around me. So that might be something like, you know, your behaviours. It could be, for example, that you're an angry person, and instead of kind of working on, okay, what's making me angry, what can I do about it? you are just taking it out on everybody around you and shouting at them and making them frightened, for example. Well, that cost of living is now too high. You can't continue to live like that. We cannot continue to live unconsciously. We have to start waking up. Everybody has to start waking up, and they'll have their own timelines for that. We all do. And we all have our own path of evolution and stages of evolution. And that's okay. But we are being warned that the cost of us continuing to live how we are is too high, and that's the true cost of living crisis. And that true cost of living crisis means that we have to start looking at ourselves, looking at our behaviours, looking at our wounds, looking at our pain, looking at our lives, and deciding what can we change for the better. And I'm talking about for the greatest good of all here. So that, it might be painful, it might be difficult, it might be very uncomfortable, but there will be some changes within yourself that you can make. And one thing that I think we can all do is be kinder to ourselves and others. And, if we're not kind to ourselves, we can't be kind to others. If we don't listen to ourselves, we can't listen to others. If we don't hold ourselves through our pains and our troubles and speak kindly to ourselves, in an encouraging way when we go through those things, then we can't do that to other people. And so the true cost of living crisis is not changing that within ourselves, so we need to really find ways of being kinder to ourselves, and often that will mean, making changes and rearranging our life so that it's an easier environment for us to do that in. And I think we're all at the stage now, kind of feels like a tipping point to me, whereby we are all going to have to start to wake up into that. And that means that we have to stop projecting blame and criticism and anger out onto, other entities, other people, other events, and start going into ourselves in order to heal those things. And if you don't know how to do that, then a good way to start is really to think about, do you want a professional to help you? And if you do, you might need to go to your GP if you can't afford it and get it through the NHS, like some therapy and some support, or they might be able to point you in the direction of a charity or support group. Or if you can afford it, then you might like to look for a therapist, or, there's lots of videos and things like that for free online if you think that would be enough for you. And you might think, I definitely can't afford the time and to do that in the current environment, but actually the cost of living crisis is telling us you cannot continue to live how you're living and you need to change. So you actually cannot afford to carry on. So lots of big changes to be made. Can take it little steps at a time. Excuse me, obviously clearing my throat chakra saying all this. And you can take it easy, take it lightly, take it step by step. I know how scary it is. I'm doing the same thing. I'm not saying to anybody to do anything that I'm not doing myself. I'm greatly examining myself and my life at the moment and seeing where I can be kinder to myself and others, where I can help people and where I can't. I mean, I have very, very limited energy because of all my illnesses, but the energy that I have got, I do try to put into, things that are for the wider good of the community and the world. And everybody can do their bit, Maybe you could do a video series, maybe you could write about it, there's lots and lots of things that you can do, and there'll be things that resonate with you, but we can all do it, definitely do it, And if you're in the, already in the thick of it, and, maybe you're in immense pain, which I know I'm not in immense pain as much, but I am on and off in immense pain. If that's happening for you, then I think, know that taking good care of yourself is enough. Yeah, sometimes we can give more and sometimes we can't. And it's being aware of that and abiding by that, really, not giving more than what you can. Because that's the flip side of the overconsumption. You don't want to overgive either, because that takes from you and then creates another imbalance in a different way. So it's all about balance, it's all about recognising what we can do, and it's all about love and doing it in the most loving, kind way. Okay, darlings, well, I hope that helps you. If you like that, then you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is Luna Louise Anna, and these always appear there first, and then the rest of them I put out onto my Facebook page at a later date. My Facebook page is at Luna Louise Anna as well, so you're more than welcome to come over there, give my page a like or a follow, come and join in. I welcome comments and questions, and thank you to everybody that has watched the series so far and has commented and liked and sent messages and things like that. I really, really appreciate every single one of you. Thank you. Okay, darlings, much love. Take care. I'll be back soon. Bye.